Hello everyone and welcome to the MS-DOS project. Sorry for the month plus delay between this video and my last one. Life has been really crazy lately, so I've just struggled to find a lot of time and motivation to work on game reviews. Now that I'm in a little bit more of a groove and I've finished some personal projects, I'm ready to have a more consistent upload schedule. Hopefully I can go back to putting out several high quality videos a month for all of you. Today I will be talking about a game called Tyrian, released in 1995 for MS-DOS by Eclipse Software and published by Epic Minigames, who later rebranded to Epic Games of Unreal Engine and Fortnite fame. Tyrian began its inception as far back as 1991 when amateur programmer Jason Emery showed off his work in progress of a scrolling background in DOS to his friend Alexander Brandon. They developed it for a while, and when they finally felt they had a prototype they could show off to a publisher, they wrote a proposal document to give to studios along with a small tech demo for a game. Both Apogee and Epic Minigames showed some interest, but because it was very bare bones, they were not overly excited about it. They worried they may never find a publisher, but eventually Robert Allen, head of Safari Software, showed a ton of interest in Tyrian and gave them leads on other programmers, artists, and other developers who could help them finish the project. Among them were game artists Bruce Shu and Daniel Cook. As development progressed, the game became a lot more popular within Epic Minigames, and as it neared completion, Tim Sweeney, yes that Tim Sweeney, approached the team and told them they would fully publish the game. Tyrian was first published and distributed in 1995 for MS-DOS. The shareware version came out first, including only the first episode. Soon after, the full registered version was released as version 1.1, having 2 more episodes, bug fixes, and various extra features. At some later date, they released version 2, which included a 4th episode and several new game modes. Information online is sparse about when each of these versions were released, so unfortunately I don't have a really good timetable or idea of why releases were done in the way that they were or when they were done. In 1999, the game was re-released for Windows, rebranded as Tyrian 2000, with a 5th episode, some minor bug fixes, and a full Red Book audio soundtrack on the CD that you can play using a Windows computer. There was even Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance ports that were both cancelled but later released to the public as freeware. Tyrian 2000 was later released as freeware and is now available for free on GOG. As such, I will technically be reviewing Tyrian 2000 and not Tyrian proper, but the game is virtually identical to earlier versions, just with some additional content. The Tyrian box contents were nothing to write home about, containing only the game itself on either CD or a floppy, a short manual, and some technical information cards. The box art does look nice though, and the Tyrian logo also spells Tyrian if you flip the box upside down. As far as backstory, there is a brief blurb from the manual, which is actually surprising considering scrolling shooters don't usually have a real plot. I'll read it to set the stage for the game. The year is 20,031. You are Trent Hawkins, a terraformation pilot. For 3 years, it has been your job to fly over tough-to-navigate planetary formations and check for habitable locations on newly terraformed planets. You execute more hair-raising maneuvers in a day than most league-trained pilots do during the course of their whole career. After many years of war, however, you prefer blasting rock formations to vaporizing enemy starships. Your latest assignment from the Interplanetary Council is Tyrian, a proposed trading world on the edge of the sector, near Hazudra territory. The Hazudra are a lizard-like race recently discovered in a nearby asteroid field. One of your fellow workers and close friends, Boos Huisilak, was a Hazudra. Yesterday, Boos was shot in the back by a waving hover drone that disappeared into the sky before you could blink, let alone stop it. Someone killed your best friend. And if it's the last thing you're gonna do, you're gonna find out why. The only lead you have is what Boos told you before he died. Quote, "My friend, you must leave Tyrian now, or you will be killed. Even after death, I could not bear to lose you. Still, what I'm about to tell you will mark you, so listen well. You are familiar with the corporation that controls the terraformation of Tyrian, called Microsol. They are responsible for my death. And do you remember that glowing rock we discovered in the mines west of here? It was more than just a pretty mineral. It's a new source of power called gravidium. Harness it, and engines will soon be obsolete. It can control gravity. Microsol wants it, and will eliminate anyone who knows of its existence. They captured me 2 days ago and tried to erase my memory as a warning. They did not know my memory is holographic in nature and cannot be wiped out. Today, I would reason that they discovered this and found me to finish the job. Now you must go, before they hunt you down. Hurry, head towards Savara, the free world. It will be difficult for them to follow you there. Go." You ran to your quarters and found them torn apart. Luckily, you managed to obtain 3 weeks leave and a Gen Core Hawk fighter. You set out for Savara tomorrow, and grieve at the thought of telling your parents that your best friend has been murdered. You grieve even further, wondering how you're to stay alive with the whole of Microsol dogging your heels. Preparing for a troubled day, you close your eyes at last, vowing to avenge Boos's death, not knowing that what will take place in the next 3 weeks will become the legend of Tyrian. Ready yourself. Of course, most people don't even read that far into the manual, so what most people would see first is the title screen. There are several options on the title, so I will just quickly run through them from top to bottom. Hitting start gives you several options of what kind of game you would like to play. One player full game is the standard story mode, while 1 and 2 player arcade modes are the same levels, just without the plot elements and a different power-up system. Timed battle gives you a choice of 3 different levels to play through with a time limit, and at the end of each level you are given a score based on your performance. I will go into more detail on the story and arcade modes when I get to the gameplay section. Load game just loads up a previously saved game, which brings me to one of my favorite parts of the game. You can save after any and every level. They have gotten far too abused by other shoot-em-ups where you have to beat the whole game in one sitting or can only save between episodes, but being able to save at any time is really an awesome feature, and there are plenty of save slots for you to go back and replay your favorite levels if you would like. High scores just show the high score table for the various episodes in 1 and 2 player mode, as well as for the timed battle levels. Instructions is a very nice feature to have as it tells you all about the in-game menus and exactly what they do. And demo just triggers the demo mode. It also shows up if you just sit on the title screen too long. It even includes a cheeky insert coin message as if it was a demo for an arcade game. And of course quit just kicks you back to DOS or Windows. When you do start a new game, you're dropped into this menu, and you'll be seeing a lot of it as you're sent to it between levels. The first option, titled Data with the little cubes, is where you learn more about the plot and the game world itself. You collect some of them in levels, but some you will just receive automatically after certain levels. Some of them are even cheeky advertisements for other games by the publisher. This is honestly a really amazing storytelling method because it rewards you for collecting things during levels by giving you tidbits of the plot, while also presenting it to you in a way that makes sense lore-wise. The next option is Ship Specs, which just tells you some information about the fighter you're currently using. After that is Upgrade Ship, which is honestly one of the most clever parts of the game. In story mode, you start with about 10,000 points to spend on upgrading whatever you would like on the ship, from the main guns to extra sidekicks to shields and power generators. The system is actually very open-ended and allows you to build out your ship as you would like by earning more points during levels and spending them how you want. In arcade mode, however, you instead pick up upgrades during the levels instead of buying them. The options menu here lets you load and save at any time, and you can also adjust the music and sound effects levels separately, which is huge for a DOS game, as well as fully remount the controls for mouse, keyboard, and joystick. Once you've adjusted all the options the way you like and are ready to go, you can hit Start Level. That brings you to this sort of map level select. The vast majority of the time you won't have any options but one level, but there are several points in the story where you can choose one or another. Most of the time, however, it seems to have a very minor effect, if at all, on how the story plays out. Once you get into the game itself, it is very much what you see is what you get. Waves of enemy come at you from all directions as you fly around and try to avoid obstacles and projectiles, while taking some enemies out along the way. The controls are very tight regardless of which device you decide to use to control your ship, which makes it so anytime you die it feels like your fault, not the control's fault. Most levels follow a standard structure of enemies coming down from the top, both moving and stationary, and finishing with a boss. There are stages on planet surfaces as well as in space, with a variety of environments, enemies, and situations. And yes, like most shmups, it is usually a lot more of a game of avoiding damage than giving it out. Luckily, however, you get some extra help to make that part easier. In the bottom right of the main gameplay screen, there are two little indicators that say armor and shield. Your shield initially absorbs damage you take, and while it isn't extremely durable, it does recharge. And it recharges quicker if you stop firing for a second. A little like X-Wing versus TIE Fighter's generator system.
Set your laser recharge rate to maintain a full charge by pressing the F9.
Your armor takes damage next, and while it doesn't automatically replenish, it can be restored. When your armor gets critically low, you get a warning signal, and after a few seconds a small ship will fly down that you can destroy to get an armor restoration item. Despite all these helps, to make you last longer than one hit, the game is still not easy. Even on standard difficulty, you'll probably die a ton. Many levels took several attempts for you to beat, but luckily the game does not punish you at all for death. It just sends you back to the main screen and has you start again. And each level is short enough that it's not a massive setback to restart a level. This makes it an actual enjoyable challenge, and not one that is super frustrating to get past. And if the hardest difficulty isn't hard enough for you, there are two even harder difficulties you can unlock through secret codes on the main menu. There are several things that mix the gameplay up besides different enemies and stages. There are a few levels where there's a headlights effect that makes it so you can only see enemies directly in your line of sight. And there's also a few bosses that flip the screen upside down so it scrolls bottom to top instead of the other way. But luckily they don't invert your controls, so they aren't too hard to manage. There are 4 detail levels you can choose from in the options and pause menu: low, medium, high, and Pentium, which is the highest. These were intended to help the game run on many different levels of processors, but each detail level looks really good. Overall, the graphics are really sharp, and it is almost always easy to make out what you should be shooting at. My only gripe is that sometimes it's hard to tell what platforms and similar large objects you can fly over and which ones you can't. It may cause you to die inadvertently. Those platform collision deaths were the only time I really felt that I died unfairly in a level. One of the big highlights of the game was the soundtrack. It was the first video game work for Alexander Brandon, who later went on to compose for Unreal Tournament, Deus Ex, Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, and many more. In fact, it's been playing in the background of the whole video. Take a listen. The plot goes from pretty personal to very personal really quick. You find out very early on that your parents have been killed and the Microsoft Corporation was responsible. From that point on, you have a real motivation to find out what happened and take out the people responsible. So, most of the game consists of you going back and forth between different planets and saving their butts from Microsoft single-handedly because...
well, the Empire doesn't consider a small one-man fighter to be any threat, or they'd have a tighter defense.
The first 3 episodes mostly follow this pattern of continually defeating bigger and bigger threats until at the end of episode 3, when you take out the massive Microsoft fleet preparing to raise that sector of the galaxy. There are many twists and turns. You get misled, you encounter mad rogue tyrants, and on and on. There's no shortage of variety in what sort of threats come after you. At the end of episode 3, it seems as if everything is tied up pretty neatly, and it's easy to recognize that that's where the game ended in the original version. Episode 4 starts out normally enough, with you trying to stop Microsoft from making a planet go supernova and killing the millions of scientists there. And it is possible to either succeed or fail at this mission, with different outcomes based on how you perform in certain stages. However, the episode starts to get really weird at the end. Like, what the heck is this floating eyeballs and ears stage? This is something I expect to see out of a Parodius game, definitely not the standard fare from the rest. At the end of episode 4, you plot a course for a random planet, which happens to be Earth, that will take you 100 years to fly to and go into cryosleep, hoping to escape the need to constantly save the Tyrian sector of the galaxy. The end of episode 4 seemed like it tied everything up in a really neat bow, but episode 5 kinda ruins it. You start episode 5 being awoken from your cryosleep by a mysterious group of beings not having traveled very far, and being effectively forced at gunpoint to do what they want and fight off basically a deity you've heard of all game, piloting a ship made of food? I'm still not really sure what's going on here, but it still just feels really pointless and tacked on, and kind of ruins the original ending of the game. It's only a few short levels, and while they are good, it just feels very out of place. The briefness and weird nature of the 5th episode kinda makes the upgrade to Tyrian 2000 from 2 not seem as worth it, but in the end, the CD soundtrack and some extra game modes were definitely worth it. Of course, Tyrian wasn't satisfied with just being a really good shooter with a great plot, awesome story, and kicking soundtrack. They added mini-games at certain points in the game. At the end of episode 1, there's a game called Zinglon's Ale, where you have to collect ale and avoid or destroy other objects that come and bounce around the screen. And at the end of episode 4, there's a shooter minigame that plays like a Galaga clone. Both of these minigames are technically endless. They both end only when you're not alive, but are also completely optional. I would recommend playing them for a little while though, because they are fun. However, if those 2 minigames weren't enough, there's a whole hidden game that you can access by typing Destruct in the main menu. This is actually a Scorched Earth clone, but the twist is that it's real-time instead of turn-based. And there's 5 different game modes to choose from. It's actually really fun and will definitely add a lot more play time to Tyrian in the end for me. When you finish the game, you get a small text scroll cutscene for the ending describing what happens. It will be slightly different depending on if you have version 1, 2, or Tyrian 2000. And then the end credits roll. And that's about it for Tyrian. When the credits roll, you get a code to type in to use a special ship in Super Arcade mode. And every time you beat a Super Arcade mode with one of the special ships, you get a new code. So there's tons of replay value. Beyond that, even the base game offers tons of replayability with branching paths and different upgrade trees available. There's even a Christmas mode that triggers if you play the game in December that changes some graphics around. Overall, I would highly recommend that everyone plays Tyrian. The learning curve is not steep as the gameplay is very straightforward, and you can always play on easy difficulty if the others are too hard for you. Not only is the gameplay fantastic, the story is intriguing, and there's tons of bonus content to keep you engaged. My only minor gripe and caution comes from installing Tyrian 2000 on my Windows 98 machine. I have a Sound Blaster Live card in my machine, and while it recognized it perfectly for music, it refused to recognize the card for sound effects. Even after installing a patch I found for Sound Blaster Live support, it still failed to recognize the card. So on that computer I have to play without sound effects. It does, however, work fantastic on my 486 machine. Many people call this the greatest shoot 'em up of all time. I would be inclined to agree with that. With the game being freely available to play, there's no reason not to play it for yourself and see what all the hype is about. I'd like to thank you all so much for watching. It's been tough for me to find time lately to play through games and record them for videos, but I think I've gotten into more of a groove at this point. Ultima 5 is a decently long game, so if I don't do that video in the next week or two, I'll probably do System Shock 2 next. If you enjoyed the video, let me know of your thoughts in the comments, and if you want to see more of these types of videos, make sure to subscribe. Thanks again, and I hope you all have a great rest of your week.